Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me.
Oh no! What
Every week. It's unbelievable.
Question, and I listen more attentively. There must have been something in all of that nothing that wasn't quite so easy to see. And I must have missed something when you were just talking to me.
See if it worked. That's the real key. You do it, then you see if it works.
I must have not been paying attention when you were busy slamming the doors. I guess the things that pass for affection ain't the same as they were before.
Don't know why. I don't know why the signal is so bad.
In all of that nothing,
Look at that.
shot me like a stone to the floor. And I must have missed something when you were just slamming the door. Oh, I don't mind just
Excellent.
a little.
All right, good. Everything's up and running. It's some good news from the doctor this week.
Oh yeah?
Lung function is much better.
Awesome.
Which is weird given all the heat we've had. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody. And I've got a new favorite sandwich.
Oh?
I think next week, depending on what happens with all the legal stuff, if we don't have a ruling by next week we're going to talk about food.
Okay.
So just by happenstance, I was pulling into a Burger King yesterday. And I just didn't want to get another Whopper Jr. I'm just so sick of the same things all the time. They had a new menu item called a fiery chicken sandwich, and I like things that are spicy, so I used to smoke, and my taste buds are mostly dead. So I ordered it, and it was so good, I went back in line at the drive-thru and I got another one.
Wow.
Which explains why I'm so fat. It was excellent, though. Way better than the spicy sandwich at McDonald's and Wendy's. The Wendy's one is good. It's not bad. But the new one from Burger King is really good. And you know what that means, folks? Wait a week and they'll discontinue it. Because whenever you find a new menu item at any of these fast food places that you really like, within a couple of weeks it's gone. That's it. They do it to lure you in. And then once you get there and they go, oh, we don't have that anymore, but would you like a Whopper? I always just say no when I leave. Done. All right, let's get this show on the road. Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan here with the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi, atop two guys smoke shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. You know, just a few months ago, I wasn't able to do that podcast that long, so my lungs are getting better, which is great. And by the way, I don't say this often, and I'm sorry for not saying this often enough, but at least 5 or 6 times a week, I get a phone call or an email from somebody that I don't know well, like a reader of the paper or someone that follows the show or somebody who listens to the podcast or whatever, or somebody who's read my books. And they'll say, listen, Tom, you don't know me really well, but I've been following, your health situation, and I really hope you get better. And, I just want you to know myself or my family are praying for you. And I do really appreciate that, and I don't thank people publicly enough because, you kind of expect it from the people that are in your life, that they're wishing you well because they're in your life, and they're people who you care about, and they care about you. But when strangers reach out and say, hey, you don't know me, but, my daughter had an issue a few years ago that was similar to yours, and I've been kind of feeling for you since your issues happened. So I want to thank those people. I also want to thank our sponsors because they pay for the show, which is great. Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, and every week I say we got to get Matt and Sam back in here, but we absolutely have to get Matt and Sam back in here to do a real estate show because the real estate market is just really funky right now. The Zany Pesci Law Office, if you're thinking about bankruptcy, now's the time to do it. And you should be talking to the most beautiful woman alive, Jana Zany Pesci. at the Zany Pesci law office. It's her and her first husband, Vinny, own that. And they're on Merrimack Street in Methuen, and they'll help you work there. They also do like property stuff. So if you have like property law issue, you should call them. Marsan and Son Construction. I was just told, and I don't know how this got by me, but I was just told the other day that Ronnie Marsan had a fall and wasn't doing well, at least hadn't been doing well. I guess he's recovering now. And so I really feel bad that I did not know that. For some reason, he doesn't show up in my timeline on Facebook. You know, the old Facebook, before they tinkered with the algorithms, if you had 500 friends, all 500 of your friends would show up in your timeline. So you could keep track of all of your friends. And then all of a sudden they decided, thank you, hon, all of a sudden they decided to change the algorithm to like only people that you interact with on a regular basis. And that's kind of crappy because I have friends like Ronnie Marshall that I don't interact with every day. I don't interact with him every week, but I want to keep up on what he's up to. And so when I found out that he had been in the hospital and he had some complication issues, I really felt bad. And so I will be reaching out to him. But publicly, I want to say, Ronnie, I hope you're doing better. And I did say a prayer for you the minute I found out. EIS investigations and gun training is now on the Valley Patriot payroll and probably will be now till right through the end of the year. We've got I have 5 or 6 stories that we've talked about them, we've reported on them, but there's a lot of follow-up stuff coming. So we've got the Lisa Pearson situation in Salisbury. We've got the open meeting law violations in Haverhill that we've filed. We've got an issue in Newburyport that we're going to talk about in a subsequent week. We've got 2 Methuen issues that we're working on, especially the Sergeant DeJesus issue with racism at the Methuen Police Department they're going to be following up on. There's a bunch of things that we're working on, and as a newspaper, having a private investigator on the payroll is huge because I'm only one guy, and I know I've got 30 writers that write for me, but they all write about different stuff, and when we're doing investigations, we need the help. So thank you to everybody over at EIS Investigations, Borelli's Deli, Power 28, and Timeout Sports Bar, Tomo and Shaken Seafood, Clear Path for Veterans New England, a real nonprofit that helps real veterans, AFC, Urgent Care, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, and I understand Dave Idconsoli is looking for help, and a free shout out to JG's Ice Cream, the best ice cream in the Merrimack Valley, and that is actually true. So, you know, people say to me like, how is one ice cream better than another ice cream? If you've had JG's, you don't have to answer. You don't have to ask that question. Go to JG's, then call me and ask me how one ice cream can be better than another ice cream because it's really, really good. All right, so we got a bunch of things I want to talk about today. We are going to talk a lot about the First Amendment. Want to get to a couple things first. There's a debate tonight, the presidential debate. It's historic. It's historic. It's historic. They're all going to use their left hand to hold the microphone, and that's never been done before. It's historic. That's all I've heard all day is historic, historic, historic. For people who don't know shit about history, to constantly be talking about historic as if that means anything. Like, let me ask you this. The next time you hear historic, I want you to hear my voice asking you this question. Does anybody remember the first Italian-American state representative in America? Anybody? Does anybody remember the first Polish-American who was elected mayor in America? Those are 2 very historic things that might have happened that did happen in the past. But does anybody remember them? No, because they're not really historic. It's historic in the fact that it's the first time it's happened. But it's not significant. So when you hear historic, you block it out of your mind. It's just pablum. They're just spewing stuff to spew stuff to sound important. There is a debate tonight among the presidential candidates. You know, they're going to shut the mic off when one person is talking over the other person. Now, I actually like that. However, that shouldn't get to that point because it's not a debate. If you have to shut the mic off, if you have to shut Trump's mic off while Biden's talking or vice versa, it's not a debate. It's a forum. A forum is you ask both candidates, what do you think about global warming? Okay, Mr. Trump, you've got 2 minutes, and when he's done, Mr. Biden, you've got 2 minutes. That's not a debate. A debate is both mics stay on and they talk to each other. If you've watched a paying attention debate, if you watched a Methuen City Council debate here at this table, or a Lawrence Mayor's debate here at this table, you know I throw out the topic and I let them talk to each other. Because the public at home needs to see how does somebody interact, how does somebody who wants to be a leader interact with another person who doesn't agree with them, or even another person they don't like. How do they handle that? Do they snipe at each other? Do they become juvenile? Do they call each other names? Are they overly respectful? And the public needs to gauge that. And so doing this 2 minutes here, that's not a debate, and I don't think we're going to learn anything. nobody who's a Biden supporter who's going to watch today's debate, unless he pulls his pants down and walks in circles talking about Jell-O pudding, there's nobody who's a Biden supporter who's going to, at the end of this debate, say, you know what, I'm voting for Trump now. And there's nobody who's a Trump supporter, unless he pulls out a gun and shoots people. And even then, there's nobody who's a Trump supporter who's going to change their mind after today's debate. Tonight's so-called debate is going to be about getting those people in the middle, those few people, like the 9 people in America who haven't made their mind up, to get them to make their mind up. And I don't think 2 minutes for one guy and 2 minutes for another guy is going to make any difference. Let's see. Both candidates have tried to steal an election. Both candidates are living in the past. Trump is living the 2020 election. Biden is reliving January 6th every day in his head. That's all he's obsessed with. The people of America don't give a shit about either one of those two things. They care about the economy. And let me say this for all my liberal friends on Facebook that are constantly annoying the shit out of me over this topic, okay? When normal people talk about the economy, when normal people talk about the economy, they're thinking about the cost of their groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of goods and services, and more importantly, the cost of building materials, because that dictates the cost of new homes that people are going to buy. It dictates the real estate market. When people talk about the economy, they're not talking about the GDP versus China and the 2% of Wall Street. So when overeducated idiots, and that's what they are, and I know some of you are my friends, but when overeducated idiots, and don't make me call you out by name because I will if I have to, come on my page and go, yeah, but Tom, what you're talking about is grocery prices. That's not the economy. Well, you're right. If you want to drill down and you want to be a petty tyrant, and you want to talk about the legal definition of what encompasses the economy, you're right. You can sway it any way that you want. You can talk about GDP, which most people don't even know what that is, right? You could talk about all kinds of banking terms, which nobody knows what that means. When most normal people, and that's what I consider myself, a normal person, talk about the economy, we talk about the prices that we're paying at the pump, the prices that we're paying for our utilities at home, the prices that we're paying for rent, the prices that we're paying for gas. How much does a new home cost? What is the inflation rate of the loan, of the mortgage they're going to take out to buy a new home? That's what normal people consider the economy. Is it technically everything that the economy encompasses? No, but no one gives a shit about the other stuff. It doesn't matter. And by the way, to the other person, I know I'm going to take time here, but I'm on a roll. To the other person who keeps coming on my page incessantly and talking about the unemployment rate. But Tom, the unemployment is down. No, unemployment is not down. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it's not down. We don't know if it's down. The unemployment rate is down. Whenever you put on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC and they say unemployment is down, they're lying to you. They don't know if unemployment is up or down. There is no metric to measure how many people are unemployed. The only metric that government measures is how many people have applied for unemployment insurance. How many people are collecting unemployment? That's what the unemployment rate is. The unemployment rate is how many people are on unemployment. Now, we all know people who've gone on unemployment, stayed on unemployment for a year, maybe it got extended for 2 years through COVID, and they ran out of unemployment and still don't have a job, but they're not collecting unemployment, and they're by the government considered not unemployed. Okay? So these are all like the government tricks, the political tricks that dastardly political people use to try and confuse you so that they can manipulate you to do politically what they want you to do and to think what they want you to think. We're going to talk a lot about that today in the 21 minutes that we have left. Real quickly on the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's coming out with a bunch of rulings today. They've already come out with one excellent ruling. They ruled in favor of Joe Biden, which is weird. It's kind of weird that they ruled in favor of Joe Biden, because all we hear on CNN, all we hear from the Biden administration is there's a right-wing court that's out of control. They're controlled by Donald Trump. It's more lies by government officials who want you to think the way they want you to think so they can politically exploit you. So you'll vote the way they want you to vote. But the fact is, there was a Supreme Court decision today that ruled against, and it was ruled for the Biden administration, which tried to stop a bankruptcy proceeding by the Sackler family. The Sackler family are the evil bastards who created the opioid crisis. They own Purdue Pharma. And they're the reason why TMF has to go out and feed people on the streets that are addicted to heroin, that are addicted to opioids. And so the Sackler family, after losing millions and millions and billions of dollars in lawsuits, tried to declare bankruptcy. And within that bankruptcy, they agreed to pay billions of dollars for treatment for addicts that they created. And the Biden administration said, that's fine. But the Sackler family said they wanted to then be immune once they pay out this big multi-billions of dollars for addicts. And we need that money, believe me. We have plenty of people in the street trying to get beds that can't get beds, okay? But what the Sackler family wanted, though, is once they made that payment, that they're no longer liable for anybody else that wants to file a lawsuit or anybody else that has become dependent on opioids and needs help or has died, and their families want to sue Purdue Pharma, which is owned by the Sackler family. So the Biden administration, who was right, and as conservative, I have an obligation to say that he was right, the Biden administration brought it to the Supreme Court and said, no, we don't believe this is constitutional. You can't walk away from your responsibility for the other people who haven't filed lawsuits yet, whose lives have been destroyed by your willingness to get people addicted to opioids. God bless the Supreme Court for siding with the Biden administration, and I don't say it often, but God bless the Biden administration for getting it to the Supreme Court. And all my conservative friends are going to be mad because you're never supposed to say anything good about Joe Biden if you're a conservative. Just like the other side can never say anything good about Donald Trump. Donald Trump went against bump stocks, tried to outlaw bump stocks, and the liberals couldn't give him credit for it. Oh, he's just saying that to get votes. They tried to dismiss it. We have to start giving credit to the other side. All right, I know I'm at 18 minutes. We will talk a little bit more about the Supreme Court, but I did want to give you that. Now, when it comes to the First Amendment, we're going to talk about two cases today. When it comes to the First Amendment encompasses three things. It's sad that most public school graduates today don't know what the three elements of the First Amendment are. It is the right of free speech, it is the right of a free press, and it is the right to freedom of religion. Not freedom from religion, freedom of religion. Don't let your college professors twist it to be freedom from religion. And they're also trying to twist the second element to be freedom from the press and freedom from speech. That's offensive, so that shouldn't be allowed. It's hate speech. It shouldn't be allowed. No, hate speech is free speech. Whenever someone talks about hate speech, in your mind, I want you to realize that that's a synonym for free speech. Because you have a right to be hateful in America. You have a right in America to say the N-word. Shouldn't do it. And we'll talk about a couple of cases here where you shouldn't be doing things, but you have a right to do it. You also have the right to suffer the consequences if somebody punches you in the face for saying it, right? But the government cannot stop you from using the N-word. They try like hell. They've got all these civil rights laws. There was a guy in Salisbury last year, we talked about it, Danny Kane, a guy I knew growing up, who drove by a interracial couple and yelled the N-word at them. The police investigated him. They went to his house. The FBI knocked on his door. But at the end of the day, it's free frickin' speech. We don't have to like it. In fact, speech that we like doesn't need to be protected. It's the speech we don't like that needs to be protected because there's always somebody trying to stop that speech. I testified yesterday in Dedham Superior Court on a case involving free speech because one of my columnists, Dr. Bharani Padmanabhan, had somebody file a restraining order against him back in 2016. Her name was Loretta Cook. She sat at the time on the Massachusetts Board of Medicine. And she filed a restraining order against Dr. Bharani Padmanabhan and the Valley Patriot, trying to get a judge to believe that she was in fear of her life because he was writing mean things about her. And trying to get the judge to enjoin my newspaper from ever writing about her. She lost that case, by the way. She lost that case. And public employees do this crap all the time. They try to use the criminal justice system to try and stop you where they should be in civil court talking about First Amendment issues. So I testified yesterday. It was very interesting testimony. Very interesting questions that they were asking me. Mr. Duggan, he says, and I know we got to move on. Mr. Duggan, the lawyer for the Attorney General's office said, didn't you, go to Miss Cook's Facebook page and use one of her Facebook pictures in your story? Don't you think that's intimidating? And didn't you publish her the gasp in the court, her home address in your story? I said, yes, I did. I don't understand your question. I don't understand your problem with that. Well, don't you see how someone might feel intimidated that you gave out their home address and that you used a photo from their face? Did you have permission, Mr. Duggan? I didn't need permission, Mr. Attorney. When you sign up for Facebook, you click a little box that says you acknowledge everything you put on Facebook is part of public domain. It's no longer your property. And it is routine for journalists, if we're writing a story about someone, if we don't have their photo, to go try and find their Facebook page, which the Eagle Tribune did to me a month ago, by the way. They went on my Facebook page and pulled a picture of me off my Facebook page, and they used it. I would never in a million years think about suing them for that, ever. So when you look at what public officials try to do to stop people from exercising their right of free speech or free press, they all kind of follow the same formula. They're all using restraining orders. They're all trying to claim. There was a claim during the Board of Medicine hearings back in 2016 that I covered extensively, where member of the public after member of the public would get up at public participation and try to talk about an issue that involved a lawsuit with Dr. Barani. And the chairman of the Board of Medicine kept ruling them out of order, saying, you can't talk about that because there's a lawsuit. Newsflash. The lawsuit does not prohibit the public from discussing the legal matter that's going to be litigated in court. The lawsuit prohibits you, members of the board, from discussing the legal matter. In fact, it doesn't even really prohibit it. Your lawyers have advised you not to talk about it because if you talk about it publicly, you could hurt your case. But there is no law prohibiting. If there's a lawsuit against a school department, if you're suing a school department because they mistreated your kid and you get up at public participation, I guarantee you if you try to talk about that lawsuit, those school board members will try to make you believe you have no right to talk about it because there's pending litigation. They are fucking lying to you. And I've seen it in Haverhill and Lawrence and Newburyport and North Andover. I've seen it all over the Merrimack Valley. Because you don't know what your rights are. You don't realize when you file a lawsuit against a town that you have every right to talk about it as the litigant. Every right. They've been advised by their attorneys not to talk about it. They've been told they can't talk about it. And so therefore they don't want you to be able to talk about it because then you're talking about it and they can't. And they can't defend themselves. So I've been through this a million, gazillion, quintillion times with boards that overstep their authority. I want to talk about a couple of cases here. So on free speech. The first is an issue that just happened in Vermont. We just had, let me pull that up. I should have had it ready. Actually, I did have it ready, but the internet keeps refreshing, and I got to get the page back. So let's pull this guy's picture up. This involves a guy named Gregory Bombard. He was arrested in 2018. He was arrested in St. Albans, Vermont. He just this week won a $175,000 lawsuit against Vermont state troopers in the state of Vermont. How did he get all that money? He got all that money because in 2018, on February 9th, he drove by a police cruiser, a state trooper's police cruiser, and he threw him the bird. He flipped him off. The police officer, much like the police officer I dealt with in Dedham yesterday, lost his shit, pulled the guy over, accused him of disorderly conduct, which could be so sweeping that it could really kind of cover anything. Which is why most disorderly conduct laws are actually unconstitutional if you challenge them. And you always should. Anybody that ever gets arrested for disorderly conduct, you should always challenge it. Always, always, always. Because they're so overly broad almost all the time. Almost 100% of the time they're so overly broad it'll get overturned. So the cop arrested him. This guy spent 2 days in jail. Had his name in the paper. He was shamed. Had a criminal charge had a criminal record hanging over his head. He sued, and the Vermont Civil Liberties Union picked up his case. handled it for free, cost him $75,000. He won $175,000. The first $75,000 off the top went to the ACLU for legal expenses. This guy pocketed $100,000. That cop didn't pay a fucking dime out of his pocket. This is what's wrong with these lawsuits. As a side note, we should talk about that another day. But I guarantee you the chief or the head of the state troopers of Vermont is now training his guys about what the laws are when someone's expressing their free speech. Do you have a right to flip off a cop? Yes, you do. Should you do it? Never. You should never do that. Because you might run into a guy like this guy in Vermont, the trooper, who's going to abuse his authority. I had one treat me very badly yesterday in Dedham. He saw my press sticker on my car and thought I was down at the Dedham Superior Court for the Turtle Boy nonsense. And I wasn't there for that. I was there as a witness in another case. The guy started swearing at me and threatening me. And I would never say it to their face because I would never be disrespectful to a cop ever. But my first thought was, this is why people hate cops. If you've had one interaction with a cop and this was it, you would hate cops the rest of your life. All right, that's the first case. Second case, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. Shit, only 10 minutes. Fuck. All right. I know I ate way too much time at the beginning. This show is just way too short. In Plymouth, a reporter in Plymouth was threatened with 5 years in jail by a guy named, what's the name of this guy? You can pull the next Canty. So he's a member of the Board of Selectmen in Plymouth. His name is Canty. This is a picture of him. This scumbag. He's a defense attorney, which tells you even more about how much of a scumbag this guy is. So here's the setup. The setup is it's an open public meeting. This is a public board with publicly elected members on this public board at a publicly posted meeting of a public board in public. The meeting date was publicly posted, and the public was invited to attend. I don't know if you've noticed, but I think I've used the word public now 9 times. It's amazing how many public officials don't understand what the fucking word public means. Excuse my French, but it's so infuriating that elected officials who represent us don't know what public means. During the Board of Selectmen meeting, there's a reporter from the Plymouth, Plymouth Gazette, the Plymouth Times, whatever the Plymouth paper is, who is holding a tape recorder or a digital recorder, and he's extending it like this to the person who's speaking at the microphone. This Board of Selectmen Canty then announces that the man who's holding the recorder is committing a felony for up to 5 years in jail because he did not notify the board that he was recording the meeting. Now, this is something that I hear in Haverhill all the time, and I can't wait to get to a Haverhill meeting and violate their code. They have a code in Haverhill, at beginning of every meeting, the president of the Haverhill City Council says, if you're recording this, you have to tell us that you're recording this. No, you don't. I don't know why elected officials feel that, let me add a little bit more context to this. Not only is this public meeting publicly posted by a public board, by public officials in public, but it's also being streamed live to the general public, and it's being recorded for cable access to be shown. So there is no expectation of privacy. But the elected officials want you to notify them if you're going to record, even though a whole bunch of other people are recording, and it's public. They want to know who's recording. Why does the president of the Haverhill City Council, why does Selectman member Canty in Plymouth need to know who's recording? Because if they know who's recording, they're going to tailor what they say based on where the recordings are going to go. In other words, if you're with the Eagle Tribune and they like the Eagle Tribune's been good to them, they're going to tailor what they say very loosely. They're not going to worry about this guy taking what he says out of context. They're not going to worry about him skewing what he said to make him look bad because I got a friendly reporter sitting in the audience. What if it's not a friendly reporter? Well, now I got to choose my words a lot more carefully. So how they perform, and that's the correct word because that's what politicians do, how they perform in public changes based on the audience, right? Right? I mean, if you're talking to a bunch of monks, you don't use swear words. If you're talking to a Catholic group, you don't talk about premarital sex, right? I mean, if you're talking to a certain group, you don't talk about, or you do talk about things a different way. And so this reporter was threatened with 5 years in jail because even though other people had already notified the board that they were recording, and the board itself was recording, and another newspaper was live streaming it, because this reporter, who, by the way, is out in the open, holding the recorder out in the open, this guy threatened to have him arrested by the feds for wiretapping. Wow. What a little Eichmann this guy is. What a little Hitler this guy is. I don't care if he's a Republican or a Democrat. I really don't care. The First Amendment is the First Amendment. And if you're a public person, there is case law. Can you pull up that case law that I sent you? There is case law on this. And by the way, there are volumes of case law on this. I only pulled one of them. I'm going to read this to you. So this is from the First Circuit Court, which covers Massachusetts, which would certainly cover this case. The right to record government officials in public. Haverhill City Councilors, you listening? I'm going to give you a minute to take out your pen and take some fucking notes, okay? So I don't have to hear anymore that we need your permission to record your meeting. We have to register with you to record your meeting. The First Amendment right to record generally encompasses both video and audio recording. For more important information on the right to record broadly, see the guides. Oh, so this is from the First Amendment guide. They want you to see their guide. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, First Circuit, which includes Massachusetts, has held that there is a First Amendment right to record government officials in public spaces. This includes filming and audio recording police carrying out their duties in public, such as during traffic stops, so long as the officer doesn't reasonably conclude that the filming itself is interfering or is about to interfere with his duties. So why should you have less of a right to record a city councilor in Haverhill or a Board of Selectmen member in Plymouth than you do a police officer who's pulling you over? You don't. There is Supreme Court law on this. There is Massachusetts Supreme Court law on this. There is First Circuit Court law on this. And every time it comes up, 90% of the time, the person being told they can't record, you know what they do? They stop recording because people don't know their rights. They assume that if a government official is telling them they can't do something, they assume that they can't do it. And that's why you need to educate yourself on these issues. Because, and by the way, this is why the government and government officials don't want you to know what your rights are. Because then they can just make it up as they go along. I think I remember a Methuen City Council meeting 2 or 3 years ago where somebody got up and wanted to talk about a lawsuit that involved a DPW worker that was suing the town. I think we talked about that. It was a sexual harassment lawsuit. I'm pretty sure we talked about that. I know the family that was involved. That's how I know about it. Somebody showed up at public participation and started discussing it, and the city council president, and I believe it was Steve Saber at the time, although I could be wrong, it might have been Jim McCarty, started banging the gavel and saying, you can't talk about that, that's pending litigation. No. You can't talk about that because it's pending litigation. Any person, whether it's the Joe Solomon case, whether it's the William Castro case in Lawrence, whether it's the DeJesus case in Methuen, any member of the public has the right, pending litigation or not, to get up in a public meeting and discuss it, to ask questions. You don't have to answer the questions, but they've got the right to get there and to ask the questions and discuss it. Because that's what the First Amendment is all about. I have a quote here from a guy named Jim Silverman from the New England First Amendment Coalition. This is how I'm going to end the show for you today. If you're in a situation where a meeting is already being recorded by other parties and everyone else is aware of it, then I can't think of any need that exists to then have to inform others of that board meeting that you are recording as well. There's no expectation of privacy at a public meeting to begin with. But if there was some kind of right of privacy, and I'm not saying that there is here, he says, a need to announce that you are recording is happening anyway, that needs to cease to exist once other parties are recording. In other words, if you already know this is being streamed live on cable access, and there's 5 people in the audience also recording, they don't have to tell you that they're recording. You already know it's being recorded. You already know you should choose your words carefully, And that should be it. So at some point, I am going to show up at a Haverhill City Council meeting, probably after the Attorney General rules on now my third complaint for violating the open meeting law. And I'm going to show up and I'm going to start recording. But I'm going to be obvious that I'm recording so they will challenge me for not notifying them that I'm recording. And I'm praying that they arrest me for doing so. Because I'm willing to go to jail for my First Amendment right. I'd prefer not to. But I'm willing to go to jail for my First Amendment right if it means educating other people about what their rights are so your rights don't get trampled on. Shame on Loretta Cook, going back to that first case in 2016, for using a restraining order to try and stop Dr. Barani from writing about her and claiming she was in fear of her life, to stop Dr. Barani from reporting on her. And shame on the Canton Board of Selectmen, shame on the Haverhill City Council, and shame on the Vermont State Troopers for all of their skullduggery, for lack of a better word. Trampling on other people's rights because they're banking on the fact that you don't know what your rights are. All right, let's roll up. Mel, we'll thank our sponsors. That was probably the fastest show I've ever done. I barely took a breath. I want to thank, who do we want to thank? JG's Ice Cream. I'm going to stop there on my way home. You said vanilla mocha? That's what you like?
No, vanilla malt. Get
malt.
Yeah,
Right,
chocolate with malt in it. So like it's an added thing.
I'm glad I asked. I'm going to try and surprise you next week if I can remember.
Thank you.
Frito Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, AFC Urgent Care, Clear Path for Veterans New England, Tomo and Shaken Seafood, EIS Investigation and Gun Training, Marsan and Son Construction, the Zany Pesci Law Office, and Century 21 McLennan Real Estate. I think if everything goes well, if everything goes right on the legal front, we have a 2-hour show for next week, I think.
Oh, boy.
But we don't know because we thought we'd be there now, and we're still waiting. We're waiting on a ruling. So.
Ooh, also, real quick, if I may
Yep, sure, go
interject, big cash jackpot night tonight. So first prize starting at $50. Last prize is $200. All cash. Sadie's Bar and Grill tonight, 6:30. Music bingo with me.
Outstanding. And it sounds like Melvin Taylor says you got to go home. Wait. So go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.